Kevin, great to be talking to you. Welcome.
Hey, great to talk to you, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, this is a fascinating topic. I'm dying to get into this with you because I think you offer a different perspective than some of the perspectives we've had on this show on this topic. But before we get there, why don't you give us a little bit of background? I think people need to understand where you're coming from
Yeah, you
in
bet.
terms of AI.
So I've been people call me the father of the virtual assistant and the father of the voice user interface because back in the '90s, all of that work that later became licensed to things like Siri and Alexa and all that was me and my team at a company called General Magic. And since then, I've been inventing in the AI space. I have 94 worldwide patents. But more than that, I've been speaking on the AI topic for the last 20 years. And I do 40 or 50 keynotes a year, sometimes more around the world, to every company that's one wants to know how to take advantage of AI across the board, and two, everyone in the audience is worried it's going to take their job. Everyone. This is par for the course, and your listeners are worried it's going to take their job. But
Yeah.
we have now thousands of years of history showing that technology does take and reduce some tasks and change some tasks, but it increased the jobs. Now, this is a very interesting thing, and I'll give you a bunch of examples. So anyway, that's the background. There are people way smarter than me in inventing what's called foundational algorithms and foundational models. I am someone who uses those models in real applications. So that's called applied AI. And I think applied AI is the most fun space, if you will, because that's where we get to take these foundational models and apply them to real tasks, real jobs, real output. So I've got a pretty good handle on how this works and when it doesn't, and how all the experts who are listening to your podcast can benefit.
One of the arguments that I've heard is that, hey, all these disruptive technologies that we've had over the past 100 years, right? Those are different. This is different from those, right? Because, hey, yeah, now looking back, I see how that was disruptive, but it wasn't disruptive to the level that generative AI is. What do you have to say to that
Yeah,
belief or that thinking?
I think that direction of thinking isn't correct, but I think people think that way because for the first time, you don't have to be a coder to speak to AI. Let's take other technologies off the table for a minute. You don't have to be a coder. You can just speak in English or whatever your language is, and it speaks back to you. And that's a fundamental change. Now, we've actually had AI that spoke English really since the 60s. And the work I did in the 90s, we clearly spoke English, right? And interacted with you in English as a real human interaction. But that had 3 million users, not a billion people try it, right? So this is a different level of that. But let me give you some examples of other technologies throughout history. So the wheel comes around thousands and thousands of years ago, and there's two guys in a town, and these two guys in a town see the wheel show up. These two guys, their only job is to carry stuff up the hill. That's what they've been doing for their life. That's their livelihood. I carry things up the hill. And all of a sudden, there's a wheel. And one guy says, well, that's it. My career is over. Okay, he goes home. The other guy gets a second wheel, builds a cart, carries 5 times as much up the hill in terms of overall volume in a day. So the simple story is as far back as the wheel, you had people embrace technology and get more productive, and others go home and die paupers. So one died a pauper and one died a rich man. That's the end of that story. And this is true with all of the technologies. When the smartphone came out, some people didn't want to embrace it. I'm never going to get one. And that included people at work. It included parents. It included all kinds. I'm never going to get one of those. Well, today, I don't know, 4 billion people have them or 3 billion people have them. Why? Because it's a productivity enhancement. And can you imagine running your business, Ed, today without, when you're on the road or wherever you are, being able to look at your email just like that, or someone text you just like that? So it's expected that you're going to get that information almost in real time, save if you're in a movie theater, right? So in fact, when you are in a movie theater and you come out, there's almost always emails or texts that say, where have you been? I've been texting for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Are you watching Oppenheimer? What's going on, right? So these are all technologies. And when every single one of these technologies came out, it displaced tasks. It changed the way tasks work, but it made more jobs. So, and another example is Excel. We talked about this earlier, is when Excel showed up in finance departments, right? Finance departments thought of themselves as, we do math. That's how they looked at the world. We do math. We do ledger books, and we do long division, and we add and subtract, and we do it all in pencil. That's how we do it. All of a sudden, Excel shows up. You put the numbers in, but it does the math for you. All of a sudden, Gene in the corner, who was a brilliant mathematician that could do long division in his head, right? All of a sudden, we have no need for him. Well, we have a need for him. His job is eliminated, but that particular task is gone. He could be fabulous at strategic finance, but we don't need him to do long division, right? So if you were in finance and your language was math, they felt like your listeners feel today. My language is English, therefore my livelihood is going to be taken. And they felt their livelihood was going to be taken because they did math, but their livelihood wasn't taken. In fact, there are more people employed in finance today than there were then, making finance departments far more productive, like 10 times more productive than they were then. And now they're very strategic, and they can analyze things at a level they could never analyze before, because it's a machine that does the math, right? You're not sitting there doing the math. So I'm going to tell you that throughout history, we've seen teams and people and everything get more productive, creating more output, driving the cost of goods and services down because they're getting more output, per human hour, right? And that drives demand up. So a quick example in this field, if I'm an independent freelance writer and I'm writing copy, marketing copy, blog posts, maybe advertising copy, whatever, for data sheets, etc., for companies, I only had so many hours. I had, let's say, 50 hours a week I could devote to that. And sometimes I had too many companies that wanted too much. I couldn't take on anymore, right? Unless I'm building out a firm. But now you might be able to be far more productive than you have been. Basically, not lowering your hourly price, but lowering the cost of goods back to your customer, right? So it could be that, I'm going to make it up, a data sheet used to cost X and now it costs half X. And you go, that's going to destroy my livelihood. No, it isn't, because that half X might be able to be done in a quarter of the time, giving you more hours to do more work for more people, thus increasing your revenue, not decreasing your revenue, provided you can market to enough companies that need your services.
That's the key right there, isn't it?
Always.
Yeah. So you need to be able to make the numbers work. You have to scale in a way that the productivity you gains enable you to get a lot more out of it.
Yeah. And in the end, you get more per hour because you're 4 times. I'm making it up. I'll give you an example in marketing that people are looking at today. So to write a blog post used to take probably days. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, you got to research it. You got to write it. You got to edit it. You got to go back and forth with your client. And so if you could get, for that client, 52 weeks, if you could get 52 blog posts out a year, everyone's super happy. And it might have taken a good portion of your week, including back and forth, to get that blog post done, right? Like research, interviews, understanding the topic, coming up with topics, just go on and on, right? So I might have devoted a day or two, or even 2.5 days in some cases, of my week to that one exercise. That customer needed to pay whatever, $2,000 for that blog post. I'm making up a number, $1,000, $2,000, pick your poison, right? Okay, what happens if I can write all 52 blog posts this week? All of them. All of them. Now, I'd have to be incredibly good at prompt engineering. Mm-hmm. I better learn that skill. Incredibly good at editing. Incredibly good at coming up with 52 topics. But I can use GPT-4 to help me come up with those topics, right? Give me new ideas. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's possible I can write 52 blog posts for that customer. Now, that customer used to pay me $100K a year for those blog posts. And it took me half my year, essentially. But let's say I could plow those out in a week now, because I got really good. And maybe it's a long week. It's an 80-hour week, but I plowed them out in a week and I'm done. That's the year's worth of blog posts for that client. I now have 51 weeks to work for other clients, And maybe I don't charge that customer 100K anymore. I charge them 50 because I'm able to do it much more effectively. And some of your listeners are going to go, oh my goodness, how do I ever get the other 50? Yes, you have to go market yourself, but there is unlimited demand for what you do. And if you're really good at these tools, there's more than unlimited demand. You should be marketing yourself as an absolute prompt engineering expert to derive marketing content, because that's what people want today. Not, I don't use that thing or I barely use it. I am the master of it. The master of the wheel died a rich man, right? Not the pauper. The master of AI, you will get rich. That's how it works.
I love it. I love it. So tell me, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a little bit. Those who think, well, yeah, but what I fear or what I'm hearing is that my clients are actually taking these tools on, inside, internally, and using it themselves. So they're not going to need me. It's not that they want me to do it for less, is that they feel, oh, great, now I need everything I need, or I have everything I need to do it internally.
Well, here's the problem with that, right? What they're doing is they're taking people that already have a full plate, and someone's saying, we can cut that budget completely, and I'm going to add to the things that you need to do. So let's say I'm a director of marketing and I used to hire Ed to write all my content. And I go, Ed, I don't need you anymore. I'm going to do it myself, which means I'm going to become an expert in prompt engineering, an expert in understanding what comes back, an expert in editing, right? So apparently I had a lot more time on my plate as the director of marketing, or one of my people did, than I thought. Were they just sitting around doing nothing? Right? So they have to gain that expertise and they have to get good at it. And then they have to produce the content and they have to edit the content. They actually have to do your job. It's what you're good at, right? And so, yes, some people for cost savings are going to do that. Now, I would say a lot of those people who are doing that for cost savings probably were going to save that cost anyway, meaning they might have come to you and said, we're just not going to do 52 blog posts this year. We can only afford 10, or we can't afford any, or whatever, right? But smart companies are going to say, this is great. I want to negotiate a different contract. Maybe I want 100 blog, I'm making it up, right? Maybe I want 100 blog posts this year instead of 50 from you for the same price. And you go, I'll take that all day. Now, a lot of your people are going to hear that and go, I would never say that. Okay, well, then your competitor's going to. That's the problem, right? You've got, I don't know, 44,000 people who listen to your podcast regularly, something like that. Am I close?
Yeah, it's more like 14,000, but hey.
14,000. I knew it had a 4 in it. Great. Well, after
I like 44.
After this show, it might be 44,000.
Yeah.
So great. You got 14,000 people. Frankly, most of those 14,000, even if they're not in the same region, essentially compete for similar services, right? So lots of people out there competing for similar services. And I will tell you, the people who are going to get the future contracts are going to be able to deliver more for less money because they're leveraging these technologies, right? So it's not that you're just competing to, keep the business. You're competing against someone else who comes in and says, they charge you 50K, but I can now do it for 25 because I am the master of AI. Oh, I want the master of AI. That's who I want to hire, right?
Yeah.
So you have to acknowledge that of your 14,000, some thousands of those are becoming masters of the technology. And on the other side of that bell curve, some are going, I'm not going to touch that stuff with a 10-foot pole. I'm going to do it all the way I've been doing it since 1962. So,
yeah.
And you don't win if you think that way. You win by becoming the master of all new tools that come along, like Excel, like GPT-4.
I would argue that it's going to be a long time, if ever, before most potential clients want to do this in-house themselves.
They're not, nobody wants to do it in-house.
I mean, look at really any profession, any skill, right? It's, you could develop it internally, but the learning curve, the opportunity costs, it's just too many obstacles to doing that. They're just too busy. I would argue that the
That's
ones,
right. That's the point.
Yeah.
They're already busy. If they had that time, they would have been doing some in-house themselves anyway.
Exactly. Now, there are some capabilities they could develop in-house. They already got a couple of staff writers. They're able to get them more productive. Yes, I get that. But Where I'm seeing a degradation of the business is really kind of at the bottom, the bargain basement level.
Mhm.
The companies that were just cranking out content for SEO purposes, they didn't care about quality.
Right,
They saw this as like, great, we can fire all these people we've been using,
right. That is true.
outside. But that was an untenable market anyway.
That is a fake market if you think about it. Those are people pushing out SEO content at 50 times a week. And it's all
Yeah,
about, that's a volume business. That is not Procter and Gamble. That is
no,
not Apple. That is a, pick your poison, right? That is a volume business. And that volume business was always ripe to be taken over by a machine. In fact, that's all they want is a machine. And by the way, I mean, we've had, essentially machines even before Gen AI pushing out SEO content and taking content of a writer and automatically rejiggering it and pushing it again and rejiggering it and pushing it again. Those tools have been around for a decade, right? They're not AI based, but they were good enough. And of course, we see this, in the stock market space, in the stock advice space, where these robo articles have been written for a decade, and you can tell it's written by a robot, and
oh,
they
they're
suck.
terrible.
They're terrible. The numbers aren't right. Okay, but they're just pushing stuff out, against thousands of stocks every single day, right? That was never going to employ a real writer. The quality, it wasn't about quality, it was about pushing out junk. So I don't think there's a great business in the volume business anyway, right?
Yeah, I would agree with you. Let's come back to the cost issue because I find that fascinating. What you essentially said was, look, fees are going to come down, period. What you've been
Not
charging,
necessarily the amount per hour that you make. I think your revenue goes up, but the fees per output come down.
that's what I meant. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, per output, per project fees, but you have to look at it differently. You have to look bigger picture. So, where is that pressure going to come from? Is it going to come from, hey, other writers who are smart and realize, hey, I have a system now that enables me to crank the stuff out and maintain quality.
Mhm.
And I am, is it going to be driven by writers themselves, or is it going to be an expectation of the
Yeah.
market, or both?
So someone's going to shoot me listening to what I'm going to say in one point here, which is what I'm seeing across the board, not across the board, in many cases, can be improved quality. And it's improved quality over the writer doing it themselves because a GPT-4 or a Copilot in Word right now, which is based on GPT-4, either one you have to subscribe to. But the subscription level Gen AI products um, are giving you ideas that you wouldn't have had on your own. And I know some writer's going to say, no, I had all those ideas. No. It learned a trillion phrases, right? It's going to come back with things. It's not always right. It's not always in your words. It's not always the way you would say it. It's not always something you'd include. However, there are more ideas on paper in 30 seconds than you would have had all day. It just is true. You don't have to use them all. And this is where all of your writing skills come into play. What am I trying to show? What am I trying to prove? What's my outcome? And what do I need to say in X number of words out of this plethora of ideas that came back? Because I can't use all of them, right? And some of them don't apply, and some of them will be great for another post or marketing or article or whatever. So, so I think everybody's got to look at these tools as, but first of all, they're a brain multiplier. What I always like to say is, I'm taking Ed's brain, and instead of one Ed, I could have 2 or 3 or 5 Eds. They're still Eds because you prompt it, you decide what you're going to do, you decide what you're going to keep, you decide how you edit it, and you decide what the final outcome is. But instead of staring at a blank screen, and don't anyone tell me that they've never stared at a blank screen, we all do when it's time to write something. We look at that and we write a line and we erase it. And, I mean, this writer's block is a normal thing, right? You're just trying to turn stuff out and it's hard. All of a sudden, there's no writer's block. It's boom, here's your ideas. Okay, great. Change these ideas, change it this way, change it that way. So your outcome an hour from now, what would have taken you a day, maybe 8 hours or 6 hours or 4 hours or 2 days or whatever it is, you're done. You can put that to rest. And the output quality, if carefully curated, is better than certainly better than what you could have done in an hour, but it's probably better than what you could have done in a day. And again, I know people are thinking, no, it isn't, because we all have pride in what we do, right? So I've made voice clones of myself, which are easy to do today, and I use them on stage, and people can't tell if it's a recording of me or it's my voice clone. Um, and I have no ego about that. It's like, actually, the voice clone is better, more articulate, sounds better. The writing is, the words that it's using are better. Actually, it's a better me than me. I'm okay. You have to be okay with that, right? I mean, that's what these tools do. Excel made us better math people than we ever were. And then we never did long division again, none of us. And this is making us better writers than we ever were, even, better writers than people do this all day long, but it's making you more productive. And so let's get back to your point. I think there'll be an expectation from people you're contracting with, right, that they're going to want to see the costs come down, or the output volume go up, right, and quality stay the same or get better, and even be, a wider breadth of topics, for example, than one might have thought they could have covered, but now you can cover a little easier. And if they don't, then your competition is going to go knocking on their door saying, hey, I can deliver this at half that cost. Then here's 3 examples of what I can do. And I'm an absolute master at prompt engineering. And they're going to take that person, even though you've been in there a long time. So again, if they don't ask you for a cost reduction, always assume that they're talking to competitors. And I know, again, everyone's going to listen to this and go, no, they're not. They've used me for 14 years and they're not going to. No. Everyone hears from competition. Your competition is out there. They want business, right? And if your competition is coming in at half the cost and the same or better quality, you're going to lose these contracts. So I think you have to think about that. And lastly, if you can produce output, if there's now 4 of you, essentially, there's 4 of your brains, so you can produce output in a quarter of the time. And I can tell you, it's, the stats look like that, by the way, or better.
I was going to ask you if that's accurate, if that's
it depends on what you're
reality.
writing. Yeah, IBM did some research on this, and there many people are seeing a 75% productivity improvement in marketing writing. Some, depending on what it is, if it's a 500-word blog post, that could be a 10x improvement. So numbers like that, right? But 3x to 10x, let's say. All right, that's what people are seeing. Now, you have to be good at prompt engineering, very good at editing, and really focused on quality output in a given time, right? A blog post has to take you now, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, pick your poison. And whatever it used to take you, I think you're going to find that's, between 3 or 4x and 10x faster than you used to be, for a lot of reasons. Now, this includes illustrations too. A lot of our work includes illustrations, and of course, writers used to hire illustrators. Some writers are illustrators too, but many you'd hire an illustrator or go to a stock photo or something like that. Well, I can generate those illustrations like crazy now, right? I can really generate them, and they're not always as good or as poignant or as this or that than an illustrator, but I have it in 30 seconds. I have it in 30 seconds.
Well, not only that, but we're just at phase 1. It's getting better by the week.
That's right.
So I think in a year, we're going to be having a different conversation about that.
It could be, but I use it like for my PowerPoints. I use it all the time. Like, I don't go to an illustrator anymore, right? So there's a task that for my life, it's probably the only task that's truly gotten eliminated, is I don't need to go to illustrators. Now, I also can use Illustrator, and I'm a Photoshop whiz, so I've been using Photoshop since it came out. But I even don't really do that. I don't need to, because I can generate things that would have taken me hours in Photoshop, and I have it in, a few minutes, because I have to do a few rounds of them. And the time, it's not about the money. It's actually about the time. I just want it done, right? I want to get things done. So I think there's an opportunity for everyone to increase their revenue and increase their output and increase their quality, but only if you embrace the technology. Again, I know people are listening to this, and some are going to go, yes, I'm going to listen to Kevin, and others are going to say, I'm never going to do that. Just think of the guys with the wheel. Just remember, didn't end well for the guy who didn't embrace the wheel.
I would say that a third to half of my audience is embracing the technology, and the other, half, 2/3 are really cautious or against it. But You've mentioned prompt engineering a few times. You have to be really good at prompt engineering. I know we could spend hours talking about that, but
Good.
let's talk a little bit about a realistic and practical plan for getting really good at prompt engineering quickly. Here's where I'm coming from with that question. There's a flood of prompt engineering information and advice out there. So much so that we almost need AI to be able to dig through it to understand, okay, how do I approach it? How do I systemize the learning of that? Do you have a practical framework or advice for, okay, how do I get better at this step by step
Yeah.
and not get lost in
So,
just a flood of ideas?
so first of all, you can teach a professional GPT-4 to speak in your tone and your voice right out the gate. So there's a setting for that, and you can put in a lot of information, a lot of things that you've written, for example. The second thing is you always want to specify how long. Like, I want an article that's 1,000 words. It needs to hit these points. So you're probably putting in the major points, by the way. Like, it didn't come up with those. You could ask it separately, come up with some major points I should think about for a blog post that does this. And it'll give you a list of them. And you go, oh, I'm going to choose 3 out of these 10. That's going to be my blog post, right? Then go, or article or whatever, right? Then in the tone of, always in the tone of. So I want the length, I want these points hit, and I want it in the tone of Albert Einstein, or directed to an audience that is X, directed to a technical audience, directed to a non-technical audience, directed to consumers who are over 60, right? All of those are very valid. So it's, again, here are the things I need. Here's the 3 or 4 points I want to make. I need to make those points very solidly. Perhaps the purpose, like this is a sales article or it's a blog. I'm trying to sell something. What I'm trying to do. In the tone of me, in the tone of this company, in the brand of this company, right? In the tone of Procter & Gamble, based on these other writings, and you can give it those writings, right? And then for this audience, right? Those are the things you'd want to say. Now, the important thing here that people screw up on is they think that their prompt has to be like 1 or 2 sentences. Your prompt can be like 4,000 words. Your prompt can be longer than the entire article. And the more you give it, the more precise you will get outcome. So the more words you put in, the better you get out. In fact, you could have written a blog post 2 years ago and say, take this blog post, update it for today based on these things. You'll probably get the best output you've ever seen because you gave it all the data that it needs, right? The other thing is that in some of the professional versions like GPT-4, you can set it up to go out and do some research from a particular website. So you can say, also based on the information gleaned from this page, give me the following stuff, right? So it can go learn from competition, for example, right? More is better. That is, if you just remember that, more is better. Who is your audience? These are all things a writer, a marketing writer, has already been thinking about in their mind, but they've never had to write it down before. Right?
Yeah. You now have to, you've made the sauce for years. Now you got to write the recipe.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's the audience? What's the tone? What am I trying to accomplish? I'm trying to sell. I'm trying to educate. What am I trying to do? How many words? These are, and here's the points I want to make. But in 30 seconds, you're going to get a terrific output that then you're going to spend 20 or 30 minutes editing and verifying facts. Always verify the facts. Let's remember that generative AI based on a transformer is only a sentence builder. It's all it does. It's only putting one word after another. It doesn't really know what it's doing, right? So people think, oh, it knew the following. Well, they fixed this, but it used to be that I could say who shot George Washington, and it would say William Tryon shot George Washington. And the reason it said that, because in a novel, William Tryon shot George Washington. William Tryon didn't shoot George Washington in real life, but it doesn't know the difference between a novel and real life unless you ask it further questions, right? So you will get stuff that may not be true, but the sentence structure will be perfect because that's all it's trying to do is create great sentence structure. If today was my birthday and I said, ChatGPT, what would you say to Kevin on his birthday? It has seen enough sentences where it says, well, I'm going to start with the word happy. And then statistically, probability wise, the next word to come after that would be birthday. And perhaps there's a third word in the sentence, which would be Kevin's name, right? Happy birthday, Kevin. It's about the only phrase that could come back because out of trillions of phrases it learned when you're acknowledging someone's birthday, that's all there is to say, right? But it's only putting one word after another with a probability, right? So it's not happy llama, it's not happy Gandia, it's not happy podcast, it's happy birthday because it's his birthday, right? Just creating sentences. So when you realize that's all it's doing and it's got great sentence structure, most of the time you have to look at the facts and be thoughtful about what you're saying and how you're saying it. So we've all, we've all heard those horror stories, and the bottom line is this is where your expertise in editing comes in. Now you have to be a great prompt engineer and a great editor, but to be a great editor, you needed to know how to be a great writer. But you may not be writing as much as you will be editing, and that's okay. And Ed, let me ask you a question. On your podcast, do you still re-listen to the podcast and summarize it manually, or do you do speech to text, feed it to a summary generator, which is based on Gen AI, and it generates the summary?
The latter.
Of course. And the day that came out, you said, praise the Lord.
Right? Well, I never did it myself. I had somebody else do it, but it was costly to have them go through everything, right?
Take notes.
And then, so that was years ago because we're on 11th year. So at first they had to take notes. Then we had transcription technology.
Yep.
And then, but you have to take the transcript now. A writer has to go through it and create a consolidated set of show notes. And now it's done in 5 minutes.
That's right. You push a button. It's just part of a podcasting platform. In fact, on many of the not on Zoom, but on the podcast. Oh, actually, I think Zoom has this now, has an AI that'll do that. But most of the podcasting platform, StreamYard, etc., just have that built in. You just push the button, give me a summary of the thing. It goes speech to text. It goes text to Gen AI. It comes out with a summary. You tell it how many words you want. Chop, chop, done. And that has allowed you now to do technically more podcasts than you used to do.
Yeah. Oh,
if you
absolutely.
You got more time.
Repurposing content. There's a lot. So you've hit on something that I hadn't really thought before, and it actually addressed a concern that I and several other people have had, which was, first of all, these tools are amazing for ideation, for brainstorming.
No question. No question.
And my concern has been brainstorming is one of the things that I love to do the most out of everything I do. I love dreaming, ideating, brainstorming. And my concern was, if I'm using these tools as a crutch to help me, those neural pathways are going to just die.
Sure.
I'm not going to be great at it, but you said something that just assured me that that's not going to be the case. And that is I now have to understand and really think better about my thinking. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a new skill that I think is going to make me a better thinker, a better brainstormer.
We're raising what we expect from you as a human.
Yes.
If that makes sense. Like, anyone could have claimed that they were a writer, as long as, let's say it's in English, as long as they could construct some reasonable sentences in English, right? And we know there's good writers out there and there's bad writers out there. There are no bad writers who listen to your show, but there are bad writers, and we've all seen them. And you go, who wrote this thing? This is horrific, right? Okay, so what this is doing is it is somewhat leveling the playing field of the quality of sentence structure, for example, that you're going to get. And so you might not be using your mind as much to construct a sentence, let's say. But now you got to use your mind at a different level that says, what do I want out of this? Did I get that out of it? How do I edit this? Are these facts correct? Right? You're operating at a different level than you used to. And yet many of us would sit there for hours, literally typing and erasing a line and typing and erasing a line. You don't need to do that part anymore.
That's low level work. Yeah.
Yes, that's low level work. Just like long division or addition was low level work. You learn to do it now in 4th grade, but you will never do it again in your life. I think none of us write cursive anymore, or almost never. I mean, never. People don't send cards. Most of us have forgotten how to write cursive except our signature. It's very hard to do. We learned it in 3rd and 4th grade. I found some papers in the attic recently. I go, I used to write like that. That's beautiful. It's just beautiful cursive. I can't do it anymore. Why? Well, we type. We have a machine that took that over, right? But it's raised my thinking about so many things. So cursive isn't as important, getting that out of my hand, as it is to, for instance, generate the next patent or come up with a new invention in my field, or think about what the future looks like 5 and 10 years from now, right? That's a whole different level of strategic thinking. And that's what I want all of these writers to do. Your outcome should be better because you're not worried about sentence structure or which sentence comes after another. You're worried about who's my audience? What am I trying to accomplish with that audience? Is it just SEO? Is it selling something? Is it educating? Is it raising brand awareness? Any of those, right? I got to think about that, right? And I got to make sure that what my outcome is that. And now I can come out with that in a quarter of the time. Fabulous. And it'll probably be better. Fabulous. Now, we should be using, GPT-4 and others, Bard, whatever, Gemini now, for ideation. And I think it's fantastic for ideation. Recently at a conference I was a keynote speaker at, these were industrial people that build plants. And I said to GPT-4, give me the processes of extracting ethane from natural gas. Here are all the different ways you could do that. Okay, of this one, tell me what equipment I need and what is the process flow. And it gave me that. And then furthermore, draw me a plant, literally give me an illustration of a plant that incorporates all of that equipment to process this much ethane per year. Boom. Take the storage tanks away. Boom. Now, here's what's interesting. I don't know if any of that was correct because I'm not an expert in extracting ethane from natural gas, nor are your listeners. Now, interestingly enough, people in the audience, I had to ask them, are those the correct steps? And they go, yeah, that's it. That's pretty amazing. Now, here's what's interesting about that. If I am a manager in a company and I sent one of my people out to take a look at how I extract ethane from natural gas, I can actually educate myself now a little bit before they come in and actually be thoughtful about my questions, even though I don't know how to extract ethane. And as a manager, I can't know how to build everything. And I can even have some diagrams, right? So I can have some stuff at my disposal to educate myself first, rather than trying to find a book on Amazon, maybe, on how to build an ethane plant, and trying to read the book. No. I just need to know what are the major steps so that I can be smart enough to ask the right questions. Did you think of this? Did you think of that? What's your background on this? What's your experience in that? So that has raised my thinking. It's made me a better manager. They probably know I'm going to do that. It's raised their bar on bringing in their experience on what of those steps maybe we can do in a different way.
You can skip the learning phase and get straight into productive conversation.
That's right. Get straight into productive conversation. So all the writers, everyone listening to this podcast needs to think of their job as being elevated now, right? They've got 4 brain power, 5 brain power, 10 brain power, 100 brain power of what they had before using these technologies. And they should go out and absolute market themselves, if they're good at it, as the robot overlord, right? They are in charge. They know how to do this. They know how to drive output and outcome. Here's some examples. And when I'm done with my stuff, you can't tell it was written at all by GPT. Okay. It's going to be in our tone, in our language, because if you prompt GPT very little, it'll come out with something and any of us can identify that was written by, a large language model. But if you prompt it really, really right, and you edit it correctly, 20 minutes later, you cannot tell. In fact, the tools can't tell that was written, right? So, and then ideation, yes, I've just been asked to write, I haven't, but I've just been asked to write an article on the impact of redoing roads in this neighborhood, right? And I go, I'm not an expert on redoing roads. I'm a writer. I'm not an expert. And they gave me a few ideas. And now, what did I used to do? I'd go to the Google and I'd say, help me understand roads, redoing roads in this kind of neighborhood. And I'd learn and I'd try and I'd lift some things and I'd give some attribution. I do all those things. Now I can literally say, give me 20 ideas about the impact, both positive and negative, on redoing roads in this neighborhood. Boom, 20 seconds later, there's 20 ideas.
And study the 2 links they gave me.
Yes.
The client gave me.
Sure.
and then do some additional research
Yes.
and give me this.
Yes. But
Right.
now I've got this incredible ideation
Yeah.
of which I'm not going to do all 20 in this 500 word article, right? I'm going to pick 2 or 3 of the biggest ones. But that's where my intelligence comes in, my intelligence and experience in writing. How do I take 20 ideas and distill it down to 1,000 words or 500 words or whatever it is, and not hit all of them? I got to, which ones are the most important? Which are the most impactful? So it's given me a lot of ideas. What I find is for ideation, it gives me ideas I would not have had, including in my keynote talks. I'm going to talk to the kitchen equipment repair, industry association. I mean, I actually know how everything works in the kitchen. I could probably repair it, but what are their concerns? What are they thinking of? Boom, 20 ideas. And I will have 1 or 2 of those on, I'll use in slides and say, I bet this is one of your problems. And they go, how did you know? Well, my research just took 1 minute instead of 1 hour. I would have done research. I might have found these things. I got it right there. Okay. It made me more productive because my job is to give a great keynote talk. Okay. A great keynote talk. And I can either spend 50 hours creating the customization of that, or 10 hours or 3 hours, but they're paying me to give a great keynote talk. They don't care how many hours it took to get there.
Of course.
And so what used to take probably 40 or 50 hours, I'm still spending 10 hours on, but I've got far better ideas than I used to have.
I read an article recently that the big 4 consulting firms, or whatever they are these days, they've been able to cut down the time it takes to make partner from by a year and a half, something like that, because the first year and a half, people would have to spend all this time doing menial tasks, doing all this grunt work. And part of it was character building. Part of it was weeding out, the ones who weren't going to make it. But a big part of it was like, we need you here. We need you here to sort through this and do all this just menial work. And now with AI, they're able to just take care of, well, first of all, these people, these new young consultants using these tools are able to just breeze through that year and a half.
Yes.
Actually do it in like 3 months. And now they're making partner in, I don't know, 4 years instead of 5.
Right. That's right. And look, there's some of the menial tasks that we did are going to go away. Like I said, sentence structure. Yes, you're going to check everything. And yes, you need to know what it is, but you're not going to slave over, should it be this word or that word? And is that really the way to say it? The models have that done for you. They have ideation that you're still going to create your ideas on top of those. Again, just always remember, you're in charge of the thing. You're in charge of the machine. No one in finance thinks that they're not in charge of Excel. They thought that they wouldn't be in charge like the first week when they saw it. They go, that's it, my job's over. But 40 years in, they're just in charge of the tool. Okay. There's no question over the next 10 years, no one will write any marketing content, probably within 2 years, maybe 3 years, without the assist of AI. Nobody. Why would you? It doesn't make any sense. People are writing patents today and they're using AI to help them. It didn't make the invention. I created the invention, but give me some ideas for some claims out of this invention. And they're actually really good, right? I wouldn't have had that idea. They're not all right, but they're good. So I highly, highly encourage everyone to get excited about this new technology. Realize it is going to drive your productivity efficiency up. It will ultimately allow you to charge less, which will ultimately allow you to attract more customers, many of which couldn't have afforded your services in the past, and today they can, right? That's fascinating. So it's a bigger market. There's a bigger market today. Let's put it this way. There's a bigger market for, I'm making it up, right? I don't know what everybody charges. There's a bigger market for $500 blog posts than there is for $2,000 blog posts, period, full stop. The market is probably 10x at $500 than it is at $2,000. So if you could produce equal blog posts at $500 versus what you used to do for $2,000, your market is 10 times larger. You need to go find those people, but your market's 10 times larger. That's what happens when you drive the cost of goods and services down. That's what we're doing here.
Well, and as a writer, it enables you to spend more of your time on your zone of genius. That's the other thing we haven't talked about. I mean, it's been implied, but I don't want to spend, which is what we do, spend 90% of our time doing stuff that really, that's not what a unique capability is. I want to spend more and more of my time doing what I do best, and then let the machines and the tools
That's a really good point. That's a really good point, because you might be really, really good at, I don't know, this type of writing that's very technical and very unusual and very tactical and very, but it takes a lot of time and it's really hard. You may be able to spend more time on those things, or the things that really drive you, or maybe you're writing a book, you'll be able to spend more time on that, right? So we're giving you time back, we're making you more productive, but always when the cost of services, of delivering services, goes down, and the price ultimately goes down to match that cost decline, the demand for those services goes up, right? Look,
Yeah.
the demand for $1 blog posts is infinite. We know that. Nobody can write one for $1, but you get my point. And the demand for $10,000 blog posts is almost zero, right? So somewhere in between there's a price elasticity curve, and you want to find the place where you can make twice what you made last year, doing in essence half the work. This is amazing. It's a great world. And I know
Kevin,
we're coming out here. So
no, I have one more question for
Yeah.
you, which is actually a good way to wrap all this up, because there's been a lot of talk about the legality of using, AI generated content for client work. I know we don't have time to get into all the ins and outs, but what do you see happening in this area? Do you think this is going to sort itself out?
Congress probably doesn't know what they're doing, so that leaves USPTO. USPTO for copyrights has said if it was strictly written by AI, it's not copyrightable. But did we really copyright most of, copyright, so to speak, our marketing material? Did we, yes, it was, yes, sort of. But really, if someone copied things that we said in an article or a blog post or even a data sheet, did anyone ever go sue someone for copying some text off someone's data sheet? No. I mean, people learn from other data sheets and other marketing and other websites, and they do it all the time. So my sense is in marketing content, I think there's no fundamental difference, even though any company could have claimed, copyright was mine. This was written by humans. You can't steal any of it. People steal that stuff all the time. I mean, they're not, they wouldn't steal a tagline, but they'd steal everything else from your website, and since there have been websites, and they rewrite a few words. I mean, I see websites that I have written, and 2 months later, I go, those are my words on the competitor's site. What am I going to do? Sue them? You took my words from my website? No. So I think it fundamentally doesn't matter. I think that companies just want this stuff written, and I think companies expect that it's being written in part or as an assistant, to you with AI. That's going to be an expectation. And I think if you approach companies and say, I'm not going to do that, I think they're not going to hire you in the future.
What about those who say, what about those who say, look, you can't use, because we don't want to be sued, you as a writer can't use these generative tools to
No. I mean the big generative tool guys, including OpenAI, etc., are indemnifying the use of that tool in case the tool somehow absolutely copies word for word something, which, by the way, they're highly programmed to not do. It's very hard to get it to do that without attribution, right? So it isn't going to accidentally come up with 3 lines from Hemingway. Just it's programmed to do not do that. So much so that they're saying we will take on the lawsuit if that accident. Microsoft said the same thing. We will take on the laws if you get sued because our thing gave you 3 lines from Hemingway, and you're getting sued by the Hemingway family. We will protect you from that because we have programmed the thing to never absolutely, unless you ask it to, give me 3 lines from Hemingway. It'll do that with attribution, right?
That's different.
Without attribution, and there are cases where it has done it, possibly by accident, possibly because those sentences have been used a lot in many places and it just came up. But generally speaking, that should not be a problem today. And I think if a company is saying that, they haven't really looked into and understood what those implications are. And lastly, obviously, you can just go use any plagiarism tools against what you've written before you send it to a company and run it through a plagiarism tool and just say, is there any direct plagiarism in here? It doesn't know about AI. It just says, did you steal something from a novel, from other marketing literature, from something? And if it finds, a low score on some things, change those sentences. You're still in charge.
Yeah.
The human is in charge in the end.
Yeah, I think whatever is still left out there is gonna go away. I mean, because there's no stopping this force, is my
No,
view.
train left the station.
And so, yeah. Kevin, this has been a fascinating discussion. I really appreciate you coming here today and speaking about this. Where can I send listeners to learn more about you and your work?
Sure. KevinSurace.com, my website. Just go to KevinSurace.com. There's my LinkedIn is there, and I accept LinkedIn messages and things like that. So love to hear from you. And I'm, like I said, I'm out speaking at conferences. You want me to speak at your conference? I'd love to show up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Ed.